I guess one thing that I find fascinating, let's look at economics writ large. There are always these catalyzing events that can mark a change in societal attitudes, in the same way that the financial crisis, perhaps changed our view of subprime mortgages. How much do you find these catalytic, climate events are changing attitudes? I mean, and I don't want to over-index on what happened in New York, California, and many other places have been living with this for years. But as an economist, have you noticed an impact? Because it's very visible and very, almost tactile in a way that you can now feel it, as opposed to it being an abstract concept.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you can literally taste the pollution in your mouth, right?
Right.
Right. This is sort of one of these times where I wished I had, Sarah Palin's superpowers, right? I love the smell of the emissions, right? Her famous statement during the campaign way back when. But of course, right? So, I mean, okay, based here in New York City, right? The Hurricane Sandy, over a decade ago by now, right, was one of these moments where, whoa, this stuff is hitting home. Well,
yeah, we really invested in resilience. Yeah.
So we did, and basically, I mean, yes, right. So that was the first time Wall Street was shut down for a natural event, right? For an environmental factor, for 2 days or so, and yeah, right. That clarified this the impacts of climate change, sea level rise, to many in the financial industry. Well, yes, we've had forest fires before, right? New York City has felt the impacts of Californian forest fires last year only. But of course, never as extreme as those current ones. And maybe what makes it even more dramatic, right? This is not like there's a forest fire in upstate New York that, a few hundred or a couple hundred miles or so away from us, maybe a few dozen miles away. No, this is forest fires throughout Canada. Like when you look at the map, right, it spans literally the entire continent, right, from the west coast to Ottawa to the east coast, Halifax, forest fires, and we are experiencing the impacts of all of the above, and basically there is no hiding from them, right? This is as hazy as the views are these days, right? It clearly is a clarifying moment.
It's interesting. There's been a lot of discussion on the economics front about pricing carbon, right? Really carbon offsets. I haven't seen as much around how do you create sort of an economic model around the cost, especially when the cost is being incurred by people who don't cause the problem. I mean, some people have talked about using the courts and some type of litigation if societies don't take enough action and it has consequences on another. As an economist, I'm just curious how you view this situation in terms of what are some of the ways in which we can look for economic, if not solutions, at least incentives to be reducing the risks that everybody incurs.
Well, okay, without being too philosophical here, I would say everything you've just mentioned, at the end of the day, is a price on carbon, right? So, it's sort of the slight historical example here, but the very first price on carbon, 1306, England, when King Edward I banned the burning of coal and put the death penalty on it for repeat offenders, right? Okay, that's an infinite price, if there ever was one. But yes, and by the way, no, it wasn't done for climate reasons, right? It was done because of air pollution, local air pollution.
Yeah.
The King's mother had asthma in Nottingham. Now, that too, of course, right? An infinite price, a ban with or without death penalty is a price on carbon. Okay, well, the flip side, the Inflation Reduction Act is also a price on carbon. It's a relative price on carbon, right? When you subsidize the alternative, you make burning carbon more expensive, relatively speaking. Yeah, that too follows basically the exact same principle. Now, of course, okay, when I call all of that a price on carbon, then truly everything is. And in some philosophical sense, that's true. Now, as soon as you go into the details, there are better or worse ways to price the external effect of burning CO2. And we should be looking for the kind of policies that do it most efficiently, most effectively, of course. But, well, beggars can't be choosers, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the social cost of carbon is so high relative to where we currently are, when it is true that every barrel of oil, every ton of coal burned causes more in external damages than it adds value to GDP, we have a real problem, right? Which, by the way, none of what I just said means we need to stop burning coal overnight completely.
We can't.
Full stop, right? We can't. But yes, we are burning way too much of that stuff. Much too much. And yes, we can do a lot more than we currently do, of course. And most of the alternatives pay for themselves many times over. This is this amazing situation we are in, where it's not like, oh yeah, going on business as usual is just the obvious cheap way and everything else is just going to cost so much more. For the utilities, for example, our electricity prices would go through the roof. No, solar PV, right? Boring old solar photovoltaic technology is the cheapest form of electricity in history, according to the International Energy Agency, right? We are in a situation where the alternative is not, the costly environmental solution that, a bunch of crazies over there might pay for. No, it's the obviously cheaper thing to do right now. Why are we not doing it? Well, in this case, in the case of coal versus solar PV, because globally, more than 93% of global coal power is locked into long-term contracts of 20 years or longer. Right?
Yeah.
So in this case, it's in some sense regulation standing in the way of us deploying the obvious cheaper technology. And that's a problem too, of course.